I just recovered from carpal tunnel surgery on both hands, and so I'm now at the point where I can actually use them again effectively without a lot of pain. So today I'm going to be doing starting on one of two pintails, and if you want to see the whole skinning process of a belly incision, you can actually go to my website or to my YouTube channel and look up the one on the hen mallard, and it'll actually show that process and the cleaning process that we go through. I will start the inseam incision so that process can be seen. It's the same process that would be done for a turkey. I will also remove the tail on this pintail, and I will position it and set it just like we would on a turkey, so I don't have to fuss with that when the mount is finished. Both of these birds are going to be actually suspended from the ceiling with monofilament. They're going to be hanging. So that creates its own challenges, and to get them lined up so they're not going to move as much. So we'll be going through that process a little bit. The way bird mounting is very similar to fish in its processing, in the sense that you have stages. You've got the skinning and the fleshing and the cleaning stage, and the washing stage. Those are its own set of problems and its own set of challenges which have to be done properly. So you can actually over flesh a bird. You've got to be careful of that, keep the membranes in there. You have to make sure it's preserved correctly and that all the soap is removed, and that process of course is using the wire wheel, using cleaners, washing it again and again and again, and get that soap out of there once the grease is out, and then putting it in a solvent, which is going to just be white gas or Coleman fuel or lacquer thinner, either one, to help remove the last of the water that's on the surface. And but we want to maintain the elasticity of the skin and the natural moisture so we can actually get those feathers to lay correctly and put it together. So that's kind of the process we're going to go through. So I've squirted this with water to separate those back feathers from the belly feathers, and made a little spot here so I can kind of see in between. I'm going to go up the back of the leg, down through here. I'm going to take these lighter feathers off of the wing here and off the tail, pull them up. I'm only going to keep my heavier flight feathers, tail flight feathers down here, and the rest of this will come off with the skin. Now I also have a line of natural white going along the edge that tells you where to go above that. I separate those down, make sure that they're not in the cut area that I'm working with. So here's my cut line down the back of the foot, comes down in here and comes through here above the tail, and then it goes around and does the same thing on the other side in that same line. So it gives you kind of an idea of what that inseam cut's going to look like. Okay, so I've got this skinned around that leg, or off of the non-feathered portion of that lower leg. And now I'm just going to skin this back. I'm going to switch blades here. And we're just going to peel this back. Bird's got a lot of fat on it. Now the vent is right here, and I have to be careful of that. So as I come up to this, I'm just going to try to clean off as much around it as possible right now as in the skinning process to remove that. So what you're seeing now is the top portion, and you can see how much space we have, and it can make this real easy to get this off of the bird. So one of the advantages, not only are you able to take and handle these separately, the legs and the tail, but you also are avoiding any kind of problems with getting those feathers lined up down the belly, and you're not disturbing those. If you're making a belly incision from here to here and do it going that way, you also risk, if you don't make the incision wide enough, of ripping the skin, and a lot of times from getting in and handling it that way, you tend to get more tears in this area, and then you have more repairs. So this is plenty of room to access this. Now we're going to turn this bird over, and we're going to work on the other side and peel this off. And once I get this off of here, this back portion, I'm going to actually remove the tail after we have the skin. It'll be, once it's down here and the head is loose, or the neck is cut loose, we will then come back and remove that tail before we do any washing and cleaning. So, alright. Here's the base of my feathers right here. You can see them moving the tail feather there, so I'm going to stay just inside of that. This is one of those things that this process, just take it slow, because if you go too fast, you're going to end up cutting something. It's hard enough to get through this process without putting a hole in something, and it happens, and you have repairs. But unnecessary holes, unnecessary roughness. You just go easy on the bird and pull lightly out as you skin it out. Very, very fatty bird. Alright, down to that tip there. Kind of a little V between where these feathers work like this, back and forth, and you just kind of work into that. And there's that oil fat gland that will have to be removed on the back side there. It's a preening gland. It's what they use they put their beak on that, get oil on it, and then wipe their feathers down to keep them buoyant and let the water roll off of their backs, so to speak. Alright, I'm going to snip this tail loose. That's all it took right there. I'm going to come under it here. Now the rest of the skinning process is the same as any other bird once you get it off of this. Removing your wing bones. Again, you can go to my video on mallards to see that process done. Again, this is just to show you the inseam incision rather than the belly incision. Now we're going off of the back side here, and now it is just handled like any other bird with the conventional method. Guys like doing it the other way still. There's nothing wrong with the other method once you become proficient with it. Just on how you want to handle. Sometimes bigger birds do a lot better with this method. I just like the idea of, first of all, when I go to inject these feet, I don't want to get this, I have problems with this stuff seeping, and you got to go through some real careful steps to keep that from happening. If you're going to paint these, you also avoid getting paint on them. So by taking these legs off, we get to paint, preserve them separately, get them positioned separately, paint, preserve, get the injection into the feet, the master blend, and then we can paint them. When we actually do the mount, we do not have to do any more painting on the feet or the beak, which is an awesome thing. It just saves a lot of nightmares and possible problems that could happen otherwise. So I like this method for pretty much most birds, except the real small, probably not so much with quail and things like smaller birds, but ducks and pheasants, this is a great method to use. I always remove the tail feathers on pheasants anyways because of their size. Alright, so you can see now we are off of the feet. We're coming around the back. So you can see how that's coming off there just like that. You want to be careful not to rip this portion as you're coming off, because this has to stay together right here. It's coming across the feet. Right here, there's the leg. Just like that. And that's our method for the back inseam. It's a little bit different way to service the skinning. here to the end of that, approximately about that right there. And that's pretty much the measurement I'm looking for, so I'm not too worried about that. At this point, I'm going to cut this off. And we deal with the rest of it from the outside, and we hang out of this body for references. We're going to remove the feet now at this point in this joint right here. Okay. Now, remembering which foot is which, you have to remember that the knuckle goes to the inside. So this knuckle right here will be the bird's right leg. Knuckle to inside. I usually lay them out on the side that they belong, just to make sure I get the right foot where it belongs. Twist that a little bit, and there's my left leg. So we've got our body. We can size that up and see if it's pretty close to what we have, which is. So I'm going to just take a few measurements around circumference, make sure that this is correct. This is a flying bird, so that bird has got a little fat layer. When you think about the fat layer I'm taking off of that, so that's probably just about right for that bird. It has to displace the fat when I clean this to make up the difference in the width of that body. That's something sometimes forgotten. All right. This difference in these two scalpel blades, of course, is this one's got a very sharp point, which is great for defining edges. You have to cut really close, but this can also poke holes if you're just trying to skin, so you got to be careful about using that beyond a point. But I love that scalpel for reaching those places. I also have a longer scalpel. Let me go grab that. Cincinnati Surgical sells these. I pick them up online. This one has a measuring device on it. It's pretty cool. It's heavier, but it's long. So if you're doing geese or turkeys, this is like ideal. Hold your larger blades, your standard blade like this, and you can use the longer blades on this too. But it allows you to reach down into areas where you can't quite get your hand in. So again, Cincinnati Surgical. This is looks like it's a Swan Morton, it says. Sheffield, England is where they're made. But a great little tool to have for bigger. Back to this, I got a little spot. It's crabbing on me here. Corner. And that one's pretty loose over there. This head has got a lot of fat. It can take some cleaning, careful cleaning to get it done right. The fattier the head, the harder it is sometimes to turn them inside out when you're pulling them off over the skull. I kind of pull up my hand with your tweezers. Just be careful about your cut. Make sure I use my fingers so I can feel where my blade is, because I'm working underneath, going working blind here a little bit just to get that loosened up. Alright, we'll just work our way up to the get that head off. Now at the point where I can invert the skin, got enough of that tissue loosened up. I'm going to work my way around these eyes here with my sharper scalpel along that eyelid. Being careful not to cut the eyelid at this point. And once that gets loose, things begin to get pretty easy. As soon as you cut through that the ear duct right here, the ear canal, things start to kind of come off pretty easy. At this point it should kind of slide off of there pretty good. Get this ear canal disconnected. There we go. That one is done. Try to clean off that meat from around the head there and work way down off the rest of that neck that was left in there. We don't have a lot of neck tissue left. Just about there. And the head is out. So again, we'll keep that for reference to help us in painting. Although a lot of this is faded, I just need to know where the pattern's edges are and whether they're very sharp. Some areas they are. Out here it tends to get a little blended, so I'm going to look at that before I actually go on and paint this. And they are, like I say, these have faded out, but they're not like they were on the live bird. So we'll use our reference photos to deal with that. But there we are, heads out. Now we begin to, we're going to turn the wings inside out and clean those off. And then we have to go through the degreasing process, which is pretty involved. That's the big job. And once we clean those wings off, get the meat out of there, we can begin doing some handwork, remove the big layers of fat, and then go to the wire wheel and clean it from there. So I'm going to tube skin this wing. Because this is a flying bird, I'm not going to, I don't want to cut any feathers loose from the bone because I want them to line up naturally. So what that does, it's a little more problematic in getting meat out of the wing, off the bone, but you just have to take a little extra time to achieve the better look and less fuss later. Done a lot of birds, I suppose you could be really good at realigning the feathers. A lot of knowledge about that. I have a limited number of birds that I do a year. Some guys are doing 300 or more birds a year. With a lot of birds, it's a lot of hands-on and a lot of knowledge, and you get good at it. You know what you can and can't do, and you know what works for one mount and not for another. because I'm a school teacher, I am not, I do these for demonstrations for my kids. I take a certain number of mounts in a year, and I love to learn. I love to see what people are doing out there, and see the different methods that are being used. I will try anything once, and if it works, it's great. If it's too hard or too difficult, if I think it's still worth investigating, I may do it a couple of times until I get the hang of it. But some of the best practices, boy, if you've had any experience at all, it doesn't take much to learn what works and what doesn't. This method I'm doing here is one of those that I just think. I do a lot of fish mounts, and in the same way that this kind of incision works best for this removing of the feet. And it's the same thing with fish. You handle everything as an individual part. So your fins are one thing, the head of the fish is another, and then the body is another. And then you have scale tipping to deal with. So all of these processes, if they're taken as an individual and you learn about each of those things, you'll improve your work. There's no question about it. There's a lot of good work out there. These guys that have put many hours into research, and they take the time. I wish I had more time for the competitiveness of this, but as a school teacher, I just don't get away during those times of year to be able to compete. So I plan to retire in a few years, and then I'll consider starting to attend those more often. If they're not local, I may be able to travel to them. Anyhow, but birds, same way. You got your wings, you got your feet, you got your head, your body, and all those parts that handling them individually will improve, in my opinion, the work, and the quality of the work. We've got this, what I call just kind of trimmed after bones, meat and everything. I'm going to take this tail off and clean this separate. I'm going to separate out the feathers that are not really, I want to be able to slide these light feathers over the tail under. So I kind of adjust this to make sure that I have just the tail there that I want to work with. And then I'm going to cut this loose right here. So I'm going to turn this over. Make a cut here around the preening gland. There, back over. So my tail is off. This is all I have for my tail that I'm going to work with and preset for flying pose. And we'll work with that separate, and I'll clean that up separate from the rest. We're going to begin the greasing process. We have our wheel here. This is a messy job. Got to have tarps and stuff ready, and borax, of course. Clean these up real good. I'm going to start with this tail, at least get this started. I'm going to hand work this tail a little bit, make some cuts down into the feather quills along the end so they can open that up, and then remove that oil gland, and then continue getting that also. Side. At this point, I want to get all the blood out of the skin and out of the feathers, so I'm going to pull this guy right side out so I can expose the feathers and pull the neck out. And then we're going to do a cold wash, get this guy all cleaned up before we start degreasing him. But this one is going to get the water pretty bloody, so we're just going to need to, right now, like I say, it's just a cleaning process. So we shall work, get him all cleaned up and ready to degrease. There he is. Now we're going to put the wing and put him in the wash. And it's the same thing with the tail. This is just cold water, and then the next several washes will be with pretty warm water and soap Dawn detergent to help remove the grease, the actual grease. I'm running a wire down this leg. Take along the center toe there. I'm going to bend it back here, and what I've done, then I wrap the legs with cotton and then attach them. Now in a minute I'm going to put some epoxy in here, and I'm going to just to keep this from any outflow, and then I'm going to inject these. So begin by grabbing my, put a little bit of cotton in here. So I'm mixing a 2-part epoxy clay. I want to just put it in the a little bit at the top where these fill in these seams on the legs where I don't want my master blend to come out, escape when I inject those feet to fill in the edge of my foot here and just work some of this down in there. Awkward here showing you doing it to show you through the camera, but it'll work. All right. So give those just a second to set up, and then I'm going to start the injection process. So I've attached these and push these in, and I'm going to turn the wire back. These are not, it's not necessary to make these really strong. These are not going to, the bird is not going to be, it's not a standing bird. And because it's going to be flying, it isn't necessary to use a stiff of a wire. And this one I got to spin around. Get it right. Spin that wire back in there, and then make sure that it's got a good anchor. Sometimes I can push that by the edge of the table. And then because this is a flying bird, of course, these are going to come in. Now, I'm not going to position them exactly now because I want to inject these feet, and so that's all I'm putting them on here, just to give me a support while I inject them. So I'm going to go ahead and inject these. First thing, just kind of run some air up in here. Hopefully this will work. There's a little bit in there. Alright, I'm going to try that again. I don't feel like I inflated it quite as much as I would. Let's try this one. Now it's going to be a little tougher because these have been in the freezer for. There we go. They've been in the freezer for a couple of years. I'm surprised that they are as good as they are. Okay. Sometimes they get so dried you can't get anything in them if you wanted to. There we go. I saw the air go through that. This stuff is really nasty. You got to have some lacquer thinner ready in case you have spills, and that's how we'll clean up anything that gets on. Now, I've got it on this cardboard just because I know how this stuff works. If you have any holes, it makes its way out. So I'm going to start by injecting from the top down and see if I can't get it to go into there. And I'm going to just pull 2.5 milliliters of each of these. I'm going to start with one. Probably just go 4, so I'll put 2 and 2. Right, there's 2. And then I'll put the other, bring this up to 4. And then just shake this to mix it up. Won't work without the tube being put together. So we get a good blend of that. Alright, now drop that go in. We'll put some on the other side. I can shoot this with lacquer thinner and try to clean this up. And my intent behind that is to just try to be able to use this again until I finish the job with the other one. Up. You can do this with a paintbrush just as easy. Next step was to paint the heads, artificial heads. This is the original, and of course it's faded out, but I'm looking for the pattern, the side of the face to match up. And that there, so these are done, and then we're finishing up the feet, putting some paint. I'm now going to put a little bit of powder paints on here, some charcoal to help darken up some of the knuckles. Get them a little more realistic, seal them up, and then we're ready to start putting them together. Alright, charcoal is on there, and then I just hit it with a little bit of a matte sealer. And then we let those dry, and it also tones down that charcoal a little bit, but still keeps the highlights there. And there's that one. I'm going to let those sit and dry while I go start drying out the fur or the feathers and get them ready. And put one more coat on these guys here. And we're good to go. This tail feather, we just spread it out, used some tape to spread this evenly, and then put some super glue and borax powder on there. And that helps to hold everything in place. But it's a little built up here, so we're gonna. Alright, so we're going to fasten this now inside. I've got a little bit of, just a slight little bit of foam removal, and then we'll have that attached. That's how it's going to look. Both sides. Maybe we'll reattach the skin and super glue this back here, these parts, get this around and start assembling that now. I'm going to go drill spots right here to allow those bones, those wing bones to just set inside, and then we're going to hook those up, put them inside the body, and get started.